So we're going to move into creating new functions now. We just evaluated. We're going to move into adding functions and subtracting functions. So that's what I've got here. And when you add or subtract two functions, you create a new function. And we're just going to call this new function h of x. The domain of the new function is going to be the intersection of the two original functions. The domain of the new function is the intersection of the two original functions. Let's go to the back and do an example or two here, and I think you'll understand what I mean. So I've got the function 2x and the function x plus 1. Let's kind of just get an idea of what these look like. 2x would look something like this, and the domain would be negative infinity to infinity. Let's think about what x plus 1 would look like. It would be shifted up 1, and it would kind of look like that. It has the same thing. Negative infinity to infinity is the domain. So let's think about what would happen if I would add those two functions together. So I'm going to add f of x and g of x. So I'm going to create the new function by adding the f function plus the g function. The f function is 2x, and I'm going to add the g function, which is x plus 1. So the new function I get is 3x plus 1. The intersection where these would cross, negative infinity to infinity and negative infinity to infinity, is just negative infinity to infinity. And you'll really use this a lot in college algebra on these domains. So even if I don't test you on it right now, or if it's not in some of the Delta Maths, know that you'll have to know how to find the domain when you get into your college algebra class. Okay, let's do subtraction. I'm going to find the new function by subtracting the g function from the f function. So I've got the f function, which is 2x, and I'm going to subtract the entire g function, which is x plus 1. So I have 2x minus x minus 1. So my new function, h of x, is x subtract 1. And the domain for this is the intersection of the two functions, which is negative infinity to infinity. And that will make more sense in a moment whenever we start graphing. Okay, let's look at a new problem then. Let's think about these two. I want to add and subtract the f and the g functions. So this time I've got two new functions that I'm going to add and subtract. So let's start off here by creating a new function, and it doesn't have to be h of x, that's just generally what they call it, by adding the f function plus the g function. The f function is negative x plus 1. The g function is 4x minus 2. So when I add those together, I get 3x minus 1. Notice this one is linear, kind of looks like that. This one's also linear, it kind of looks like this. They both have domains of negative infinity to infinity, so the domain of my new function is also negative infinity to infinity. Here I'm going to subtract the f function and the g function to create a new function. So h of x equals the f function. Subtract, and I always put the next function in parentheses because I want to make sure and remember to distribute the negative. So my new function is negative x plus 1, subtract 4x, subtract negative 2, which is positive 2. So my new function is negative 5x plus 3. And the domain is negative infinity to infinity. Why don't you pause the video and see if you can figure out these last three yourself and then unpause it and see if you're right. On this one, notice that I don't just have an x here, I have a 5. So this time I'm not only going to add the functions together, I'm going to evaluate them when x is 5. So I'm going to have f of 5 plus g of 5. So I'm going to start with the f function, but I'm going to put 5 where the x is in just a moment, and then the g function. And then I'm going to put 5 in for x. So I have 5 squared minus 3 plus 2 times 5 plus 1. So h of 5 is 25 minus 3 plus 10 plus 1. So it'd be 22 plus 10, which is 32 plus 1. So h of 5 is 33. Okay, let's do the next one. This time I want to evaluate f of negative 1 subtract g of negative 1. So I'm going to start with the f function, and I'm going to put negative 1 where the x is. And then I'm going to subtract the g function where I put negative 1 where the x is. So I get negative 1 squared, which is 1, subtract 3. This is negative 2 plus 1. 1 subtract 3 subtract. Negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1. So 1 subtract 3 add 1. Negative 2 subtract 1 is negative 1. So the h function at negative 1 is negative 1. Let's do the last one. This time I'm going to do the g function at negative 1 and subtract the f function at negative 1. So I'm going to have the g function subtract the f function. So let's do the g function first. So I'm going to put negative 1 where the x is. 2 times negative 1 plus 1. Subtract negative 1 squared minus 3. So this is negative 2 plus 1. And then I've got to subtract whatever this is. 1 minus 3. Negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1. Subtract negative 2, which actually means plus 2. So the answer is 1.